Let's start, Mr. Hitchcock, by discussing this whole business of frightening audiences. Do you find that audiences are frightened by different things now from the things that frightened them when you started, 30 years ago, 35 years ago, making films?
No, I wouldn't say so, because after all, they were frightened as children. You have to remember that it's all based on Red Riding Hood, you see. Nothing has changed since Red Riding Hood. So what they're frightened of today are exactly the same things they were frightened of yesterday.
Yeah.
Because this, shall we call it, this fright complex is rooted in every individual.
Do you think, when making films, that women are frightened by different things from the things that frighten men?
I would say so, yes. I would definitely say that, after all, women are frightened by a mouse. Men are. You don't see men jumping on chairs and screaming. So there are definitely different things.
So when you make a film, are you setting out to frighten men or women?
Women, because 80% of the audience in the cinema are women. Because, you see, even if the house is 50-50, half men, half women, a good percentage of the men has said to his girl, being on the make, of course, "What do you want to see, dear?" So that's where her influence comes as well. So men have very little to do with the choice of the film.
When it comes to audiences in different parts of the world, take American audiences as against British audiences, instead of men and women for a moment. Mm-hmm. Bearing in mind your Red Riding Hood point that we're all frightened by the great simple things, are American audiences frightened by different things from European audiences?
I would say no. You see, you've got to remember the American audience is the global audience. As I once reminded an Englishman, I said, "You don't understand America because you think they are Americans, but they're not. America is full of foreigners. They're all foreigners since 1776. So therefore, whatever frightens the Americans frightens the Italians, the Romanians, the Danes, and everyone else, from Europe."
Do you think that it does an injustice to you simply to think of you as a man who, above all else, has frightened the wits out of audiences?
Yes, but you have to remember that this process of frightening is done by means of a given medium. The medium of pure cinema is what I believe in. The assembly of pieces of film to create fright is the essential part of my job, just as much as a painter would, by putting certain colors together, create evil on canvas.
Now, you would go as far as that, would you, to say that to create fright is an essential or the essential part of my job?
Of my job?
Yes.
Only in terms of the audience expected from me.
Let me put it in another way. You're a master, aren't you, of the unexpected?
Well, that's only because one's challenged by the audience. They're saying to me, "Show us." And I know what's coming next. And I say, "Do you?" And therefore that's the avoidance of the cliche, automatically. They're expecting the cliche. And I have to say, we cannot have a cliche here.
When you talk about putting bits of film together and then creating in terms of what you call pure cinema, the sequence that you're going for, I can imagine that it must have been a bit of a shock to you personally when talkies came, because in a sense you're talking almost about a classical technique, aren't you?
Well, the only thing wrong with the silent picture was that mouths opened and no sound came out. Unfortunately, when talk came in, the vulgarians, the money changers of the industry, immediately commenced to cash in by photographing stage plays. So that took the whole thing away from cinema completely. It's like a lot of films one sees today. Not that I see very many, but to me they're what I call photographs of people talking, and bears no relation to the art of the cinema. And the point is that the power of cinema in its purest form is so vast because it can go over the whole world. On a given night, a film can play in Tokyo, West Berlin, London, New York, and the same audience is responding emotionally to the same things. And no other medium can do this. The theatre doesn't do it because you've got different sets of people. But remember, in a film, they're the same actors. A book is translated. How well do we know? I don't know. The risk is in translating even a film, what they call dubbing, you know. Yeah. There's liable to be a loss, and therefore, when one's thinking of a film globally, the talk is reduced to a minimum, and if possible, tell the story visually and let the talk be part of the atmosphere.
Is it true that you are yourself, I've seen it in newspaper cuttings and this kind of thing, that you are yourself a great expert on crime?
Well, do you mean in committing
I wasn't suggesting, no, Mr.
No,
Hitchcock, no.
As a detective, you mean, on that side?
No.
No. I'm interested in, and I suppose one has at one's fingertips all the details of the famous cases of the past, and I've often used examples, pieces of them in films. For example, in the film Rear Window.
Yes, I remember well.
There are two passages in it which come from famous English crime. Crippen case, I used a bit of that. And the Patrick Mahon case, you know, Mahon was a man who killed a girl and then cut her up into pieces and threw the flesh out of the window from a train between Eastbourne and London. But his great problem was what to do with the head. And that's what I put in the Rear Window, with the dog sniffing the flower bed. And I remember I was making a movie years ago, and I employed as a technical advisor a man who was one of the big four at Scotland Yard, and he was on this case. And this man, Mahon, didn't know what to do with the head, so he put it into the fire grate and put a fire under it. And there was a big storm going on outside. It was the crumbles at Eastbourne on the beach. And the heat, while this thunder and lightning was going on, it was all terribly melodramatic. The heat under the head caused the eyes to open. So this poor man ran out into the storm and never came back in the morning when the fire had done its job. And this particular superintendent, ex-superintendent rather, Scotland Yard, told me that he went to the butcher's and got a sheep's head and put it in the grate to test the time it would take to burn. So the head business went into this picture.
What frightens you personally, Mr. Hitchcock, if anything?
Any trouble frightens me. I was once asked, what is your idea of happiness? And I said, a clear horizon.